I, 32F, resent my boyfriend, 32M, about introducing kinky sex and polyamory to me. Long story short, I was always a deeply sexual person, but growing up in a non-Western culture, South Korea, I was never exposed to kinky or BDSM culture. I am bisexual, yet I had a happy vanilla, monogamous relationship with my ex-boyfriend for about 6 years. Then I came to the US, broke up with him and explored the dating/hookup scene. I had some shitty experiences. There was an attractive athlete guy who told me I had my ex-girlfriend fucked by 5 black men and that was the best. Are you kinky? Or a muscular Russian guy who almost used a Korean woman as his sex toy without a consent. She barely spoke English. He said he later tried to pimp her out to his friend, and she finally cried and resisted. All these stories were shocking, and lowered my self-esteem a bit. And then I slept with my current boyfriend. I had known him for about 2 years, we were both international students in the same program / and sorta wrote him off because he didn't look like a serious person. Too sex positive. I didn't know the word sex positive back then, and bisexual. But after going through all the bad guys in the dating market, I gave him a chance and we started all the kinky things together. It was a Christmas break and things got sorta magical. We got totally caught in passion. We did lots of crazy stuff, rope, toys, in the car, collar, socks, foot stuff, and it blew my mind. He suddenly looked like a prince and I fell in love. Somehow he looked above my league. He's tall, preppy, blonde and blue-eyed, well-educated, well-traveled, and has a charming extroverted personality. People still give him a praise like "Bo today I fucked up a man" or "Oh his blue eyes." Initially I felt like if he were not bisexual and kinky, he would be the person who would not even like me on Tinder. My self-esteem was a bit low. And we started a sorta long-distance relationship and he demanded an open relationship. I never knew the concept of polyamory or open relationship before, but it made sense and I gave it a try. It was a rocky road. I agreed with the open relationship term partially because I was madly in love, couldn't stop thinking about him a second, and I wanted to keep him. But for the first couple months, I never slept with anyone while he was hooking up with other kinky men for some fetish stuff. He even made me say hi to one of his former male hookups who was Chinese, which I felt was humiliating as a woman and as an Asian person. He had all good intention because he believed in polyamory and ethical non-monogamy, but I was not philosophically prepared for that. In retrospect, I would have refused to do that, but at that time I did, because somehow I wanted to assimilate with the new culture that he introduced. I had the desperate need to assimilate with the Western culture in general. Then I realized that he's actually leaning towards submissive, so I started pegging him with a strap-on dildo. I bought that in a nearby adult toy store and brought it to his place. Since receiving anal sex was his ultimate taboo in his life, he got totally hit by that and started feeling really attached to me. In some sense I messed him up the same way he messed me up. He said I turned the table. He denies that that is the reason why he fell in love with me. But I sometimes still suspect so. After I started doing that, his attitude towards me changed a lot. Thinking that way doesn't give me a pleasant feeling though. While we were separate spatially, he continued to hook around and it bothered me. For example, he hooked up with a gay man. The guy tried to use popper on himself, a chemical drug that functions as a muscle relaxant / and by mistake spilled it into my BF's eye. BF doesn't do anal sex with men and I trust him on that, but the popper incident was still upsetting and disturbing. Also he once sucked a man's thing without a condom and I found it upsetting because of the risk of STD. The biggest thing that upset me was that he started watching sissification, cross-dressing and being a submissive like a girl / porn / hentais. At this point I was totally exhausted. Before then, I could make sense of most of the new concepts he introduced to me such as polyamory, open relationship, kinks, bondage, and male bisexuality, even though I had to process a lot. I tended to overthink, read a lot to understand him, and try to become an open-minded mother-like figure who can understand most of his secrets and kinks and imperfection. I was repelled by what I saw on FetLife, Kinky People's Facebook / but still tried to understand all of that. But when he started sending me cross-dressing shopping mall websites and sissification hentais, it was the last straw. I said I can't take this anymore and I don't want to continue the relationship. He reacted to me in very disappointing ways, such as getting angry, resentful, and saying that he's gonna cancel everything we planned, and he also tried to sell one of my tickets to his friend. I think he reacted to me in a childish way and it was another big turn off. Well, the thing was, we already booked lots of trips together. I was very depressed at that time and I didn't want to give up on all the trips. And I read some stupid toxic relationship coaching in my native language, saying that you should put up with your man's things one more time when you wanna give up everything / so I went to his place again. Then we reconciled. He stopped watching sissy stuff and fervently convinced me that it's not his primary kink, so he can stop completely. He still had fantasies about threesome, so he organized a session with me and a transgender man. I ended up engaging in the threesome session. It was interesting. The trans guy was very respectful. It was another attempt of mine to try to assimilate into the Western culture, since threesome is much more common and casually accepted here. Well, did I like it? It was not something I was hugely into. I just thought that I'll keep seeing him until I find someone better. I was lonely and I was not brave enough to lose him, since he became more and more affectionate. Last winter he was still organizing fetish sessions with other kinky men and I let him do so, without even caring too much. Well, he does extremely low risk activities in terms of STD, and he doesn't emotionally connect with them. So I started getting accustomed to that, in a nonchalant way. Then COVID came, and now I'm quarantined with him for 7 months now. Things are very fine. He cooks and cleans for me. We've been to lots of nice places together. We are sort of official now as a couple. We have quite a lot of sex, a little less frequently, with less energy. I perform less wild things. I watched a lot of porns and FetLife profiles. I organized a threesome with a guy I met on Tinder myself, and I had a lot of fun. I developed some disturbing sex fantasies where I worship BF's body, which I feel like I should stop fantasizing about. So the thing is, my BF became very affectionate to me after all and treats me like a queen. I'm still sort of affectionate to him even though I'm not sure I love him. I think I've been way too traumatized by the introduction of the whole new world, kinky sex / polyamory, and still didn't recover that much. I wonder if this is some sort of Stockholm syndrome where you fall in love with someone who traumatized and hurt you. I have a huge urge to talk about these things to people from my culture, Korea, but all these things sound way too foreign and monstrous and horrible. I once posted this stuff to one of the feminist forums in my native language and the reaction was super negative. People are not familiar with kinks, BDSM, and sex-positive stuff. I feel a bit isolated from my culture. I'm not sure I'm that sex-positive either, though. Too long didn't read. I got traumatized by kinky sex and polyamory stuff that BF introduced to me. Even though now I got a bit used to that, I still feel resentful about it and I don't have people to talk to. What should I do? You should find a therapist. If you can find one who's Korean or familiar with similar cultures, that'd be best. Edit, you should also reconsider your relationship with your boyfriend. Most people in the US are not particularly kinky or polyamorous. If that's not what you want in your sex life, you won't have much trouble finding people who share your perspective. As a Korean American woman myself, I know how hard it is to talk about sex openly with other Korean people because of the judgment and such. But if you need to talk to someone about this, you can DM me. Also, I highly suggest you do go see a therapist because you did all those things that you weren't super comfortable to do. For any sex, it should be consensual without coercion. Also, don't let your loneliness be the only thing attaching you to him because you deserve someone who loves you for you without making you do uncomfortable things. Also, it's not fair to your BF that might love you if you're not in love with them. It's not fair for you both. There's a lot in this post where you are not living authentically and not working to ensure your emotional and physical needs are met, which points to self-esteem and internal boundary issues and possibly some problematic relationship expectations based on past issues. It's vital for your emotional and physical health to repair those issues so that you can go on to say no to things you don't want. You didn't want an open relationship and you didn't want a lot of the kink stuff you are involved in, but you did it anyway. It's important you find a community outside of the kink scene. Seeking out people who are interested in things you are interested in that have nothing to do with sex so that you can build some healthy non-sexual relationships. And it's important you go to therapy to build your boundary system and find out what you want out of your relationships. Because this is obviously not what you want from what I am reading in your post. I'm curious, who told you that engaging in kink, again, something which is fine to do privately, was a part of assimilating into Western culture? That way of thinking is incredibly toxic and I find it difficult to believe you reached it entirely on your own. The stuff you were engaging in is pretty fringe here, not that there's necessarily anything wrong with it. But what is wrong is that you felt like you had to do it to be accepted culturally. I hate responses on here that are like get therapy because I think finding a good therapist is really difficult and it can be expensive. That said, it seems like a sex therapist wouldn't be the worst idea in the world since you don't have anyone else you feel like you can talk to. It honestly sounds like your BF is deeply addicted to sex and convinced you that engaging in all these different kinks and fetishes would empower you, despite the fact that he did a lot of things you weren't okay with and dragged you into other things which you weren't particularly interested in. I guess all I can say is that I'm really sorry that this happened to you and that you don't really owe anything to any /culture. It sounds like you are being torn between what I'd personally think are probably sexually conservative norms in Korean culture and what you have perceived as a more sexually open Western culture, and as your BF drew you towards the latter, even if the idea of Western culture being a no-rules kink fest is a fiction, you felt more isolated in the former. It sounds cheesy, but you've got to just be yourself, and find someone that will respect that and that you are able to do the things you want to do with them without worrying about whether or not you are being true to any cultural expectations. Culture isn't a prison, it evolves constantly because people borrow the things from it which are important to them, and modify or add where they feel it is lacking. Don't lose yourself. I'm 31F, supposed to move into a new place with my boyfriend, 33 meters, next week and I don't think I should. Background, we've been together 2 years, but always had our own places. I was never 100% sure with him because I cannot stand how angry he gets when he's stressed about anything. However, I do love him and it's been 2 years. He was in a situation where he has to move, and I don't like where I am, so we agreed to move in together. We've had discussions many times over the 2 years about his response to stress. He gets stressed out very easily and when he does, he immediately becomes very agitated. There is a lot of tension, which I hate because it makes me feel on edge and uneasy. But the part I really hate is that he will kind of turn on me, blame me for things when he's stressed, become very unreasonable, blame me for crazy things. As long as I don't say much, it blows over quickly and he then apologizes and everything is good. But, even though I know it's just his response to stress, I really hate when he acts like this. I don't want to be blamed, even briefly, for stupid things. I don't want him getting angry at me, totally unreasonably, or snapping at me. Even though we both know it's just stupid and he'll apologize shortly. We keep having this same conversation. Things had been fairly good for several months. And as I said, I do love him, so I agreed to move in together. It was an exciting time. He decided to rent a townhouse for us. He makes very good money in his career, much more than me. I had to stay with a sick family member for 6 weeks. And so while I was gone he found a really cute townhouse and sent me pictures, and rented it. My credit score isn't the best, so he just rented it in his name and paid first and last. Over September and until now, while we are finalizing everything, he has become horrible to deal with. It's the same behavior as before. Granted, there are a lot of stressful things involved in moving, and just in his job in general. But even so, the amount of tantrums he has is exhausting. I feel like I'm on a merry-go-round. Everything we do seems to result in him getting stressed and very angry, briefly, and getting mad at me, for nothing. Even things like trying to order high-speed internet at the new house, or packing, or dismantling equipment, gaming system, 3D printer etc. Or his dog barking too much. It's leaving a very bad taste in my mouth. I've never lived with him, so I can always leave when he's in a mood and being unreasonable. I'm honestly scared that living with him will be very difficult because I'm imagining all the things that could go wrong in life, and how I'll be blamed for it. How anything that isn't right at the new house will be my fault. I don't know for sure this will happen, but seeing him in stressful situations and how he handles it is making me very wary. Today he yelled loudly at a customer service rep on the phone. I understand why he was stressed and upset, but the yelling causes my stomach to flip. Then he was in a very snappy mood with me because something else wasn't working properly. Then he called me unbelievable because he asked me to write a reference number down while he was on the phone and the only pen I could find wouldn't write. Stressful, but not that stressful. It's pretty easy to ask the person to hold for a second while we grab another pen, or type it on the phone, but his response is to get mad at me, of course. Afterwards, he hugs me and says he's sorry he's taking it out on me. But, is this normal? In the house I grew up in, I never heard my parents snap at each other or even raise their voices. I am not enjoying this tense atmosphere he's always creating over everything. So now we are supposed to move into this great new place next week. He's super excited, talking about our new home, planning things, etc. And I'm suddenly thinking I'll be making a mistake moving in with him. Do you think I just have cold feet, or am I right to feel uneasy here? Too long didn't read. Is this cold feet or red flags? Boyfriend is always flipping out when stressed. My 23F mom was just diagnosed with cancer. Roommate/friend 22F blew up on me for not hanging out with her and said my family issues aren't an excuse to be a bad friend. Am I overreacting by not wanting to be friends anymore? I moved in with my roommate D 2 months ago and it's completely changed our friendship. I live with her and her best friend K. They've known each other for 7 years, and I've known D for only 1. Since moving in, I've noticed some bizarre behavior from D towards both K and I. Examples include, 1. D calling K when she visited her grandparents for 3 days and asking if she's planning to come home soon or if she is fine with wasting her rent. 2. Texting both K and I whenever either of us is not home and asking when we will be home. 3. Getting upset with me for being in my room with my boyfriend when he comes over, and urging us to come to the living room and hang out all together instead. The list goes on, and after sitting down and talking with Kay to get some insight, not coming from a place of shit talking but rather, hey, I've been noticing these things and I know you've been friends for a while, so I was wondering if this is normal for her and how you suggest I handle it. I've learned that she always likes to be included in everyone's plans and does not like to be alone, thus the weird almost parent-like dynamic of her always wanting to know where we are. Kay said she has always been this way, and that she doesn't like it either but knows it will not change. This would have been manageable and something I'd be willing to talk about with her and resolve, if not for a recent incident that honestly turned me off from wanting to be her friend entirely. I was leaving to hang out with my childhood best friend, who I've introduced D to. The three of us hang out frequently, but on this particular day my friend Jay and I had plans for just us two. No big deal, D and Jay just met 2 months ago anyway. About 30 minutes after I leave I get a text from her saying you're fucked up for not inviting me and thinking I wouldn't notice. I don't fuck with that bullshit, so keep that in mind. I'm of course thrown off by this, but I try and empathize and tell her I apologize for not considering how she might have wanted to come. I assume we're all good. Part that really set me off is once I came home, she's all fake smiles and tells me it's okay and that she loves me, but then I find out she texted Kay saying I don't care if she's going through things with her mom. That's not an excuse to treat me like shit. My mom was diagnosed with cancer this month, I'm extremely disturbed by her ability to say that confidently and think she's somehow a priority and that it was necessary for her to lash out because I hung out with my friend without extending the invitation. I recognize that cutting ties and moving out might be unrealistic, but am I crazy for wanting to? Too long didn't read. My friend/new roommate of 2 months who dislikes being alone and wants to be included in everything lashed out on me for hanging out with someone without her, and said that just because my mom was recently diagnosed with cancer doesn't mean I have an excuse to treat people like shit. Am I rational for having no desire to fix this, but rather accept the red flags and move on from this friendship? Update: sat down and spoke with her. She basically threatened me and said I'm not even that angry right now. Do you want to see me get angry because I can do that for you while smiling like an absolute psychopath? Told me family members get sick, we get depressed, it doesn't matter, it's still not hard to invite someone out, and eventually stormed out of the apartment because I was making her feel like a bad person. Making arrangements to move back in with my parents for the time being. Thanks everyone for the support/advice.